Welcome back,
guys.
Charlie.
You hear me, guys?
Yeah, got you, buddy. How
Can
are
you
you?
see me? I mean, I can't see you guys.
Okay, well,
You can
you
switch on your
probably
camera
see
now.
someone needs to. I think I'm going to share the screen to go over some things with Charlie. And Charlie, are you back from Miami?
I'm back.
All
You
right.
can start your video if you want. You can share your camera now.
I'll do it too, Charlie. Hang out
You
together.
guys.
All right, there I am. Charlie, it's the video thing on the tab. It'll say stop video, start video.
Gotcha. I should have started it. There we
There
go.
you are, buddy. All right, so you need a vacation from your vacation?
Well, I'm back. It's fun.
All right. Yeah, well, you know what, buddy? I heard that the AMC guys were following you to Florida. You wrote that piece about the CEO of AMC while it was starting to climb.
Right.
And yeah, and the way you phrased it was, I forgot the name of the CEO, but he is wooing instead of what I always learned that, CEOs and IR guys don't woo, they woo people to screw people. Right? All right. Yeah. I mean, just like we do as men. Anyway, so, I'm wondering, and he came out yesterday, what a story. And, it should be
The whole thing is crazy. I mean,
it should be illegal to be able to make money that easily. I have to grind it out, bro.
Well, listen, I keep getting these emails. Why am I so hard on AMC, the shareholders, the CEO? I mean, let's just kind of lay this out. You can't make up a story like this. This is a money-losing company that now, because of some sort of conspiracy theory on the web, which is essentially on Reddit and on Twitter, is now that there's massive illegal naked shorting going on, which there might be some, but that it's somehow there's a cabal of hedge funds that want to put this wonderful company out of business. And because of that, average people are out there probably spending the last dime they have in their pocket to buy the stock. And
who's the guy, Charlie, that still bearish, thinking it'll only be worth 1 cent?
Yeah, Rich Greenfield. And by the way, okay. and the people that are part of this cult are so nasty and so belligerent, and this is like you don't even have to start. I mean, we're not talking about. I don't start fights with people on Twitter. I just point stuff out. I mean, I get stuff of there are pictures floating around of a gorilla, violating me. I mean, there are pictures floating around from these folks, and we put folks in quotes because they're disgusting.
I don't know you that well, Charlie, but if I saw something like that, I would say, no, not Charlie. He's not into bestiality. Right?
Say a lot about me, Dale, but that is one thing I'm not into.
In fact, if we ever get together, we'll go to the zoo and see if it's real.
Yeah, okay. But it's really disgusting. And
it is.
And then they conflate. My wife has a business which teaches people tells people how to cut the cord of their cable subscription, how to find programming in a way to cut the cord. It's somehow they're conflating that, which she has a streaming service. So I'm joining up with Rich Greenfield and to help my wife's business which is a streaming business, which obviously benefits if AMC goes out of business theoretically.
I see. Okay,
it's just so nuts. And then you got a crazy CEO. I mean, listen, I actually have a good rapport with him. I actually like Adam Aaron. We know some of the same people. I mean, he's been around and he's a smart guy. But he's going out there, in a sense, engaging with some of the least sort of desirable types that own his stock. And it's interesting when a CEO offers free popcorn to shareholders. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. It's just, the whole story is bizarre. I mean, listen, I don't want AMC to go out of business. I'm pretty sure there's going to be movies for forever. I'm also pretty sure that its business model is problematic, even pre-COVID. Who was going to the movies? Not a lot of people, right? I mean, the window that movies were in the theater started collapsing dramatically pre-COVID. And forget about it now.
Right.
You know, the experience just isn't that much fun, and people rather stay home. And some people rather go to the movies. I get that, but you know, does all that justify what's going on here? And really, the movement of that's been created here of shareholders. By the way, AMC is now owned 80% by individual investors.
Wow.
It's usually the other way
That's an
around.
unusual number.
Oh yeah, because it's usually the other way around. It's a flip,
Okay.
right? Usually when you have a strong, stable company, institutions own it in large part. This is different. This is flip. So the people that could lose a lot of money here are the people least diversified, you know, average investors. Obviously, there's some people playing this. There are hedge funds involved in this, clearly riding on the backs of what's known as the AMC apes. No doubt about that. They're playing it up and, you know, selling when they have to. But you know, it kind of reminds me the cult around the stock of QAnon, and I'll tell you why. I know I grew up with guys that believe in QAnon. Okay, these are working class guys that I grew up with that, you know, stuck home during the pandemic. You know, they you know, you can't help it, but if you have nothing going on in your life, you know, you start getting involved in these cults. This AMC thing reminds me of some of the conversations I have with them. When my friends tell me, oh, there's a pedophile ring run by Hillary Clinton and John Podesta and Tom Hanks, I'm like, all right, prove it. And then they come up with some other excuse. Well, it's this, it's that. It's almost the same thing with this. When you engage with one of these AMC apes, the ones that aren't totally nasty, that really want a conversation, you say to them, why do you think that, you know, this is worth what, you know, the $20 billion valuation on something like this that almost went out of business a couple months ago? And they come up with all these crazy excuses, and on top of it all is the sort of QAnon like conspiracy that a bunch of hedge funds want to put AMC out of business through naked shorting. And so it's a great, you know,
it's everywhere though, Charlie. I mean, I could give you an
Yes.
example. Do you know who Jack Schwager is? He wrote the book
So-
Market Wizards.
Yeah, it kind of.
Anyway, he wrote a book, Unknown Market Wizards, and he said that he had one line in the book, and he said, you know, he talks about the best traders, and he said, politics aside, he didn't think that President Trump would be a good trader because he never admits he's wrong.
Yeah, interesting.
And he ended up with 1-star reviews, even though the rest of from some people, because of just that one line. And I told him, well, maybe he had 4 great years, you know, like he has monitors on his desk and puts on a position, says, oh, we're going to have a trade war. So anyway, so it's a world that we're in, Charlie. You know, I don't enjoy it. It's part of it. But, you know, this is just a symptom of the times. And I know you wrote about all the legal hassles with the All-Star game. But, you know, I actually have an idea for you to start looking into, because I think it's so critical for everything, for all of us. And it is business. And it's all these hacks. I mean, you talk about what's happening with supply chain issues. All right, maybe it's one thing not to get a container ship out of China that used to cost a few grand, that's 10 grand, and how long it takes to unload at the ports, you know, have physical constraints that raise prices. But when you hack a pipeline, or, you know, now our steaks are going to be more because 20% of meat production has slowed down. I think this is a story of the year and going forward, is what's happening with ransomware and other hacks that could, you know, take down our grid.
Yeah, you know,
Then
the
there's
AMC
no business.
You're right about that. The AMC story is interesting, and it does say something about the world we live in. You can extrapolate some bigger.
Maybe it's to
issue.
distract us from, some of these more serious things that are going on. I mean,
Absolutely. And I will say this: the AMC story is interesting. It's a sign of the times that stock investing becomes almost cult-like and us against them, and people like being part of a movement. And I think there's obviously a certain part of something happening in our society where people, instead of going to church, gravitate towards stocks as their savior. That's a story. This electrical grid business with the hacks is a much bigger story, more consequential. I mean, here's what I would say. Look at the infrastructure bill that Joe Biden put out there. Look, just let's break it down. How much of that bill, the money going to that bill, is going to our cyber infrastructure? And I would say it's zero. And this is the big problem that we have in the United States. Everybody thinks infrastructure on a federal level is roads and bridges, and we should build all these things. First off, roads and bridges are supposed to be built by localities and states because the people in those states use that stuff. I mean, there's something called the Port Authority of New York and New Jersey, which helps build infrastructure between New York and New Jersey, because the taxpayers in New York and New Jersey, we live very close to each other. Obviously, we use the same bridges. Therefore, we pay for that. You don't need some guy from Iowa shouldn't be paying for that. So that's the first thing. Infrastructure should be done on a local level because those are the people that use it. Obviously, if there's a federal highway system to be built, we should do that. But that's not what we're talking here. The federal role comes into play, my view, when it's a national interest. And one of the infrastructure holes that we have nationally is cybersecurity. If you can just take down the country's electrical grid through a hack, you got some real problems here. And that's where the Republicans, I believe, should be pressing Joe Biden on right now. Joe Biden came out yesterday, the president came out and said, businesses should handle this. I mean, that's almost like saying businesses should be, hire their own armies to protect themselves from foreign invasion. That is businesses, yes, and businesses should play a role and, try to stop their employees from downloading stupid stuff. And, I get emails from Fox every day on that. But if it's a national interest to protect the electrical grid, to protect supply chains, that's where some money should be going. And I'm telling you, they're spending nothing on that in this infrastructure bill. It's a big, besides the wasteful stuff. And there are a lot of social
programs, multiple social programs in that infrastructure, isn't there?
Yeah, and this is what we should be spending on. I mean, people think infrastructure is a road. It's not anymore. It's the stuff that you and I are doing right now. We lived a whole year online. We conducted business. The economy improved. It got better. We survived a pandemic because of this. If this isn't totally secure, if you could take the nation down through a hack, we got some real problems, and it's a federal issue that needs to be addressed. And the Republicans, I'm surprised they haven't used this to jump on to attack the infrastructure bill, because it's so obvious that this is a national need.
In many people's eyes, even going back to 2016, that people think that you have to see missiles and bullets flying to be in a war. This is a war. Maybe this is how World War III has already started, through cyber attack.
Who knows how you can press a button? You can hack into our national defenses, and
there probably is.
Missiles flying.
I remember talking to John McAfee, who's really a kind of a character, but he thought years ago.
I've seen the documentary.
Anyway, he thought China already had the capability to shut down our infrastructure.
I don't know. I mean, listen, there's a little bit of the gang. Listen, I'm sure there's really smart people in China, but that country is a little bit of the gang that can't shoot straight. I mean, if this Wuhan lab has taught us everything, as evil and vile as they are theoretically, and how they want to control the world, they're kind of numbskulls at it as well. And I think we should trust but verify. We don't have to be scared to death. We don't have to be scared to death of China, but but we should be beefing up all our systems, because listen, the hack could come from North Korea. I mean, there's
Right.
it could come anywhere.
Anyway, I think that's an undercovered story
Yeah.
about business, and what a great point you make about there not being a dime for cybersecurity, because I think that's really our national security, and just being able to maintain the lifestyle, with oil and
Right.
food and water. No one will care about the price of AMC if they can't get a steak to barbecue this. What
That's
are we
right.
going to do? Barbecue flat screens? So, just something to keep an eye on. So let's get to baseball and the All-Star game. Charlie, you've been writing about it and how it's turning into a legal nightmare for Major League Baseball, moving the All-Star game. Any idea how you think, is this just going to drag on through the All-Star game, that they'll be playing the game and there'll be litigation in courts happening simultaneously?
Yeah. Well, listen, I think the game was going to be politicized anyway. I mean, I'm going to put you. I've done a lot of reporting on this from the baseball standpoint, from the Rob Manfred, the commissioner's standpoint. So I have this pretty nailed down. They were being obviously in the run up to the All-Star game going in Atlanta, given everything that's gone on in the nation, and particularly the Georgia voting law. They were put on notice, meaning Major League Baseball, by various activists. Stacey Abrams, the former the gubernatorial candidate, almost became governor. She's a major voting rights activist in the state. LeBron James's group, which is again a voting right. He's got this civil rights group that he's part of. Al Sharpton, you know who he is. Yeah. They all put Major League Baseball, I'm told by baseball officials, senior baseball officials, they all put him on notice that they wanted the All-Star game to be a celebration of or a political statement against the Georgia voting law. Okay, so now Rob Manfred was sitting there saying, listen, we want to have an All-Star game. We want to celebrate the life and of the late Hank Aaron, former Braves great, one of probably the greatest hitter of all time.
Hammering Hank.
Yeah, he just died, earlier in the year. And
it wasn't from the COVID shot.
No, it wasn't from COVID. It was.
But a lot of people online said, "Well, he got a shot," and then he died.
They tried to say that about Marvin Hagler too. It's absurd. Yeah. Okay, so they wanted to stay. That's what they wanted, and to have a positive message. They saw this thing becoming a circus. Stacey Abrams actually reached out to a senior, someone who works for Manfred, and basically and said that she wanted a firm statement from Major League Baseball against the Georgia voting law. Baseball, that's not what they do. Okay. By the way, most of the country, when they find out about this Georgia voting law, they don't think it's so onerous that you might have to show your ID. And, some of this stuff is so absurd. Then Biden gets into the act. And remember, Biden called it Jim Crow on steroids. And, which was maybe one of the, you criticize Trump's, verbal miscues. That was one of the dumbest things I've ever heard. But anyway, if you know anything about Jim Crow, this was nuts. It wasn't even a little like Jim Crow, just so forget about Jim Crow and steroids. So baseball hightailed it out of Atlanta. They said, listen,
the only crows I know are Heckle and Jekyll.
Yeah, well, listen, that's not, I don't make light of Jim Crow. I mean, it was a horrible time in our country's history, but to compare this law to it is absurd. So baseball got out of town. Where Rob Manfred, I think, erred, and in a major way, is that in doing so, he said something like, something along the lines of like, listen, this because this law does not represent the values of baseball, so we're going here. He probably should have kept his mouth shut and said, we're just going here because it's turned into a political thing. He didn't. They know that's a mistake. They would love to have that moment back where they could say something less political. In any event, now you have a conservative group, the Job Creators Network, basically suing to bring it back. This lawsuit's going to go nowhere. Okay, in my view. I mean, I was like reading the papers. It's like it's hard to get your hands around like their legal theory. But it's a publicity stunt, and they want to highlight this. And I think conservatives are going to keep highlighting, the far left movement of corporations, and like an MLB is a business, and the Biden administration in the run up to the 2020 elections and 2020 midterms, and that's 2022 midterms. I'm losing my years here, but and I think this is a political issue, and I think we're going to be talking about during the All-Star game all these issues. There's no doubt about that. Even if this lawsuit goes nowhere,
it's a balk, Charlie. Anyway, I just want to circle back a little bit to this ransomware because of the use of crypto as a means of payment. I read that the old ransomware attacks used to be they demand a $200 to $500 debit card with your PIN. This is pre-crypto. And because of the anonymity of certain crypto like Monero, and they're able to have big price tags on this. Could this be an Achilles heel for the feds to come down on crypto? And isn't it right for crypto exchanges, just like we do if you have a stock account or you have an FX account, that they have to know their customer. They have to track in banks $10,000 transactions or more, and that's not happening in the crypto space.
Yeah, I mean, listen, regulation is what's going to drive the price of crypto down, my view. Same with a lot of smart guys I know that are, I know a lot of big hedge fund guys. I mean, we're talking about household name hedge funds, 10 billion and up. They're obviously in crypto. It's not their whole portfolio, but they got 1% or 2% in there and playing around in it and trading it. If you talk to them, every one of them will say if they're worried about one thing, deflating Bitcoin or all these things, it's clearly regulation. Because listen, they're already saying it. I mean, if Janet Yellen couldn't be any more clear, and by the way, right now, all the Biden administration is doing is focused on infrastructure, trying to spend as much money as they can to try to buy the 2022 elections. So they're not really thinking of crypto regulation per se now. But as soon as this window is over and they either get the bill or they don't, they're gonna, and then the elections come.
They're running out of time, aren't they? I mean, by August, I think that there's not going to be much legislation done. It should be gridlock because everyone's going to be focused on 2022.
Right. So once that happens is when you're going to see, my view is Janet Yellen and Gensler, the SEC chair, and who knows who else get into crypto in a regulatory way. And I think they're clearly worried about it from a money laundering standpoint. They're worried about it. It takes power away from them. Obviously, it's an alternative currency, and they're worried that that illegal activity occurs broadly using crypto. It's a facilitator of illegal stuff, and they're kind of on strong grounds on the ladder.
Yeah, they are. On that one, they are. Yeah. I don't know what kind of ground Janet Yellen is on, proposing a global corporate tax rate of 15%, not for just us, but globally. I mean, where does a Treasury Secretary, I don't think anyone, former Treasury Secretary or Fed official has ever proposed a tax rate for other than the United States.
Sounds absurd. I can't imagine China going along with them.
No, but Europe, could Europe go along with it?
Maybe that maybe based on some interlocking sort of thing where we agree to something that they want and they agree to something that we want. But it's I don't know why Ireland would do that. Ireland is a small country. It's kind of a tax haven. The economy does pretty good there because of it. Why would they want to screw up a good thing? I can't imagine Britain going on. They're not even part of the EU anymore.
Right.
What I'm saying? It's just right. But who knows? Could you imagine like a country that's really benefiting from the lower tax rate? Really, um, uh, well, by the way, one of your somebody in the chat says Europe has proposed a minimum tax. This isn't U.S. driven. It is and it isn't. It's the reason why it's getting some headlines and we're talking about is because of because what Janet Yellen said, not necessarily what some dude in the EU is talking about. So we'll see what happens. And here again, another one says the point is that they even the playing field. Listen, we don't want government sort of evening out the playing field. We want, that's not what government should be doing. It's, government, in my view, should be letting the private sector
represent their nation.
Yes, and let capitalism even out the playing field. Now, obviously, China plays by different rules, and everybody plays by different rules. But it's like it reminds me of the debate over climate control and global warming. If we have certain emission standards here, do we really think China and India are going to go along with them?
Right. It's kind of unrealistic.
No.
How's it going to be enforced?
Yeah,
they're not. So I want to wrap it with this employment number. So it wasn't as big of a disappointment as last month's, Charlie. Although the dollar weakened substantially on it. I'm curious as to, it's the strangest employment situation I've seen in my lifetime where there's a need for workers and, there's so many jobs that can't be filled. And we keep getting these weak numbers in employment. And do you think that we've had a permanent change and people just aren't going to go back to work? And one thing on the inflation front, is it going to have to take higher wages to bring people back? Because the narrative about inflation being transitory because of supply chain issues, et cetera, once you start raising wages, that's not transitory because you're not going to be able to cut them again unless we have a severe downturn.
I agree. And, one of the problems and I know this just from a micro level, because I'm going to be doing some reporting today for Fox Business and Fox News as well, from a restaurant in Manhattan, and getting his the owner, Gerardo Bruno Sestina restaurant in Manhattan, which is one of the best Italian restaurants. It's created by the Bruno family who came here penniless. These guys worked their rear ends off. They came as busboys and dishwashers and you name it, and they created three of the best Italian restaurants in the city: Sestina, Caravaggio, and San Pietro, which we'll be filming from. And he'll tell you that his margins are very thin. He pays a lot in pays a lot in rent. He's got regulations up the rear end, and the wage pressure could crush him. And I think that's that's one of the other problems. You got wage pressure on businesses that can't afford it. It's one thing to have wage pressure on JP Morgan paying secretaries more. It's another thing Amazon. To have, or Amazon. It's a whole other thing with these small businesses. And, and I think that's one of the looming economic problems that we have. And, we're going to, there's a theory there that if they can't raise wages that much because they go out of business, well, then guess what? We're not going to have inflation. But, they're going to raise it enough, I think, to attract people back to work. And then that's where the inflation kicks in, probably. And,
because that's not transitory.
No, it's very hard. It's very hard to take it down after you raise wages.
Right. Right. Most people would
but listen, you're supposed to have rising wages in an expanding economy as businesses compete with
without it being legislated.
Right. See, that's the difference here. My friend Gerardo at San Pietro is not competing with the restaurant across the street for workers. He's competing with the federal government paying people to stay home. That is that's a whole other ball game. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, many governors have ended those programs. I think they end. Don't they end? When do they go to? The end of October?
Probably, but that's a long time, man.
Yeah, it is. All right. Well, Charlie, I'm glad you finally got your trip in. When we first started talking, you said you couldn't wait to get away and enjoy yourself. And
It was great. And I just want you to know, I forgot we were supposed to be on today. I
oh,
was in the gym at my local Crunch, and I look at my iPhone, and there comes your notice about I'll be coming up in 10 minutes, and I'm like, oh
okay.
my god!
Well,
So I
thanks
jumped
for
in.
giving me a spot. I was trying to bench 315 for 10 reps. So, I'm glad you came in, partner. Great to see you
Anytime.
again, Charlie.
Talk to you soon, Dale.
All right, buddy.
Bye
That's a
bye.
wrap. You could follow Charlie's writings at Charlie at C Gasparino. And, I'm tweeting Charlie's stuff out there. And really, it's great to have Charlie as a regular in our rotation. Thank you, buddy. Have a great
Anytime.
weekend. All
Anytime,
right.
Dale.
And
Talk to you
everyone,
soon.
have a great weekend. Do your work. And remember, don't just count your pips, count your blessings. We'll see everyone on Monday. Adios.